I've got one flame to burn, one race that I can say I ran.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 21047.com podcast. My name is Keith Cartwright. I am the host of this show, and I'm glad to have you along listening in today, wherever it is that you are listening, and whenever it is that you might be listening in. I am just glad to have you here listening to this episode today. This episode is sponsored by my friend Doug Bond. Doug is the latest 21047.com financial supporter. He does that through the Patreon platform. You can learn more about Patreon by going to my website, 21047.com, TWOTIM 47.com. Click on the home page and scroll to the bottom of the page there, and you'll find some information how you can support everything we're doing here at 21047.com, to include offering some financial support, which helps me try to grow this mission, grow the different things that we're doing, and who we reach with that. And so I really appreciate Doug coming on board and being one of the sponsors and sponsoring today's episode. Kind of interesting that Doug would be the supporter of this particular episode, because we're going to be talking a lot about first-time marathoners. We're going to be wrapping up the series I was doing with Julie Bravo, who recently completed the marathon that we have been leading up to. But Doug also ran his first marathon last weekend in Richmond, and so we're really proud of Doug. Great to have him sponsoring this episode, and like I said, it's really appropriate that he does so. So thanks, Doug. Again, coming on board this month through the Patreon platform, which you can learn more about at 21047.com, and offer your financial support to continue growing what we are doing here. Today's episode, and I always like to say what we're doing here is try to run to dark with the light that we find in running journey. Certainly it started with my own first marathon. There was just so much I learned in that experience. But then tracking folks like Julie Bravo and Doug and, just a whole host of folks last weekend at Richmond, I got to watch complete their first marathon. Missy Hep, Andres Bravo, Julie Bravo, Melissa Diamond, Doug Bond, Holly Santasier, Kimberly Caldwell, Andrea Talley, Eric Lucas, Melinda Pollan, Cameron Branham, Jenna Starkey, Leah Starkey, Susan Starkey. We had the whole Starkey family there involved. Chuck Murphy, Howard Cross, Trisha Lucas. This is just a list of friends that are a part of the Megsmiles group that I belong to, that Julie belongs to, that we'll be talking about here in a little bit. But I didn't run this year, and I'm glad I didn't, really, because I got to stand race course side there and watch all of these runners finish their first marathon. And it's always just an experience to see that, to see their faces, to see the pride that they had in finishing something they clearly, to some degree, never thought that they could possibly do. It was really a bit unusual, and you'll hear me talk with Julie about it, that I saw so many smiles when people were running down that hill, finishing up their very first marathon ever. And that was a little unusual for me, because I promise you, when I was finishing up my first marathon, there was only pain. There were no smiles. So it was good to see so many folks smiling, but just that collective group of folks. And there were half marathon runners. My wife finished her first 8K. There were so many folks finishing their first races. And so that's kind of this whole episode, as we wrap up our series with Julie Bravo, is really focusing on what comes from somebody when they finish that first race. Just this added confidence, this added pride, just so much. And so I'm anxious to get you over here to talk with Julie Bravo, or at least listen to the conversation I had with Julie, as we spent 3 podcast episodes devoted to tracking her training, which it's well documented, was a very rigorous training program, to get to that big moment last weekend when she went to the starting line, lined up, and then finished the race that she had worked so hard to finish. And I'm just going to let you now hear Julie. We're going to turn it over to Julie Bravo and my conversation with her, the road to the marathon that she ultimately completed. So let's talk with Julie about that. Well, I want to welcome Julie Bravo back once again to the 21047.com podcast. And I guess today we must introduce her as marathoner Julie Bravo.
Yes, thank you. I'm very happy to be a marathoner.
Well, let's just jump right to that. Maybe we'll work our way backwards. How does that feel to say that?
You know what? It feels really, really good. I'm grinning from ear to ear right now because, the last time we spoke, I knew I could do it and I knew I would do it in some way, but now to physically have done it and to have joined, the small rank of the population that actually has run 26.2 miles, to be in that exclusive, quote unquote club, as people call it, it feels really, really good. So I'm real happy right now.
Now, you said you're back to work today. Is the medal still on you?
The medal is actually in my purse. I'm not wearing it, but I did have a bunch of people that wanted to see it. So I did bring it with me to work today, and I am very, very proud of this medal. So I think I may have to put it on a little bit this afternoon.
Right. So anybody that stops by the office, they just happen to get to see the medal pulled out.
Exactly.
So let me ask you, was there any unexpected challenges in the race? And you and I have talked several times, which is great. And so we've kind of talked about what you were expecting and kind of what you were what you were afraid of, what you were worrying about. Was there anything in the race that happened that surprised you?
There were a couple of things. Number one, just the cold weather. I was not anticipating it to be as cold as it was. I live in Southern California, and the temperature here ranges, maybe the coldest we have in the middle of winter ever is like 55 degrees. And generally, we're in the 60s to 70s year-round, so I'm not used to cold weather. I had traveled to Virginia previously twice to run the half marathon, and it had been cold then, but in the 30s and 40s. And race day, I believe the starting temperature was 27 or 28 degrees. So that caught me a bit off guard because I already had my race outfit planned, and I planned on running in shorts. I trained in shorts. I was ready for shorts, and I didn't want to change that and start messing with tights or pants or different things. So the cold in the beginning was a little bit of a struggle, but once you start moving, you get past that, so that was okay. And I did have one other unexpected little glitch. I didn't anticipate this at all. About mile 17, for some reason, I got a little dizzy. And that had never happened to me in any run before. And I got scared for about 5 seconds thinking, oh my gosh, what if I can't finish this? What if I'm dizzy and I have to sit down and get medically taken off this course? What if I pass out? You hear about people passing out because of heat and lack of hydration and all of that. And I didn't think that was the case. It wasn't hot and I had been hydrating. But I did have some little energy chews with me. And so I thought, well, maybe I'm just a little sugar depleted, or maybe I'm not refueling as best as I should. So I ate a handful of those and walked for about 2 minutes, and then my head cleared and I was good to go. So that was a slight little bump in the road, but luckily nothing came of it and I was fine.
Well, good. Yes, you definitely looked fine when I saw you there at the end. I am curious about the weather because in talking with a lot of people, it sounded like they didn't have the races that they had hoped for or expected out of themselves. And what was the hardest part about that cold? Now, you have that factor of you just hadn't experienced it yet, but I'm wondering if, for me, I thought, boy, just standing around in that beginning, that cold could just really mess with my head. Now, I didn't run, but I was thinking about if I was out there running, that would be the hardest part for me, standing, waiting, and just having no way to really stay warm. I didn't know if it messed with your legs. Did your legs tighten up, or how did the cold impact you?
Luckily, it really wasn't terribly bad in the beginning because I was familiar with the start area from being there 2 previous years and knew that there were hotel lobbies right along the starting point where you could stay in to stay warm. So the group that I had traveled with to the race, we all got there early enough to near the starting point and get into a warm space. So we were inside a warm lobby as long as we could be. A great friend of ours also brought a lot of throwaway clothes, throwaway jackets, throwaway pants, things that we could wear in the beginning to stay warm and then ditch right away. So I had a very warm jacket on that I was able to start in, and I picked up a pair of heat-warming, thin, tight pants that I was able to wear over my shorts, and I even wore those into the starting corral. And basically, 2 or 3 minutes before we were to start, I quickly stripped off those pants and tossed them to the side. Actually, I didn't toss them to the side. I tossed them to my husband, and he used them as a scarf around his neck. So my throwaway pants were a scarf for him for a few miles. But that helped. So I wasn't standing out there in my shorts for too long. And once we started moving, my face felt very numb for a beginning. Even in the first few miles, my nose was very cold. But my legs, I think because they were just moving, they were fine. I had gloves on. I had something covering my ears. I had a hat on to try to keep the heat, from leaving through my head. And it really wasn't that bad. So all I could say for people that are going to be standing around in a cold race, try to stay inside as long as you can, and if not, have some warm clothes on as long as you can, and then ditch them, before you start running.
Yeah, I really felt for you all Westerners. We had a lot of folks in from California and Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado. Obviously, this was colder than you have been experiencing out there, and it was really the coldest weather we've had here this fall, winter, and I think it was one of the coldest Richmond marathons in a really long time. I know it was cold when I ran my first one in 2014, but I think it was colder Saturday. It just felt, I really felt for my wife Katie, who was running her first race, and that, oh my goodness, this is not going to give her a good taste because it's not always that cold. So
luckily the sun was out though.
Yeah,
the sun was shining. It wasn't, that sun. Even if it didn't bring heat, it was something, and it brought a little bit of heat, I think. And it also mentally, having the sun out, I think was so much better than it would have been if it had been cloudy, or goodness gracious, if it had been raining, that would have been a whole other story. Then it probably would have been snowing, and I don't even know what I would have done. I would have lost it. So the sun shining was a positive.
Yeah, and I didn't feel much wind. I don't know if there was a lot of wind out on the course.
No.
I think the wind would have made it feel brutal as well.
I think so, too. There wasn't too much wind. There's a little bit in some spots, but it wasn't terrible at all.
Well, talk to me about we've talked about some of the challenges. What was some of that marathon running experience? 26 miles. What were the highlights? Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about the finish line, but what were some of the highlights over the course of running those 26 miles?
I know that lots of different races have different support levels, and not all of the folks listening to this are going to have the opportunity to run Richmond. But the Richmond Marathon has the name of being the country's friendliest marathon, and it is so true from what I've experienced at other races. There are so many spectators on this course that were just holding up signs or saying good job or smiling, and that really helps. I ran a race a couple of weeks ago. I think maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, I ran a half marathon in my local neighborhood and in San Diego, and there was no spectator support. There was no one with signs. There was no one anywhere on the whole course saying good job or keep it up. And I've realized that really is a huge mental boost when you have people, even complete strangers, smiling or cheering and holding up signs, even if it's not your name on the sign. If it says, go Melissa, I'm proud of you, Mommy. I'm not Melissa, but I'm thinking of a kid whose mom's proud of her, and I think to myself, that's just like my kid being proud of me. So that really was lovely, just having the support. That made the run go by, quicker, I think, than nothing to look at. That kind of also distracted me a bit when I'm, needed something to distract me, I would be able to read the signs that people were holding along the course, and that was really great.
In terms of running, did you, and you talked a little bit about mile 17 getting dizzy. Now, did you reach a point in the race where you ever thought, wow, this is running-wise or conditioning-wise, this is really getting hard. I'm beginning to wonder if I'm going to make this thing.
My experience may not be typical. I don't know. I think everyone has different experiences, but I did not have that. I did not have that hitting the wall. I did not have any of that during this race. It really was a perfect race for me. It was so wonderful. I'm just on cloud nine thinking about my experience. When I got to, I stopped a couple of times. I forget exactly which miles. I think it was between mile 6 and 7, I stopped to use the porta potty for the first time. And then I had to go again around mile, 9 or 10. I had spoken, I think, in our first or second podcast about some bladder issues that I have, that I was concerned that I'd have to stop a lot at porta potties. And so I did that. And one issue with that I was just concerned about in the back of my mind was the time it was taking me. Because me running in and out of a porta potty is quick. I mean, it's 35, 45 seconds. I don't know. It's just real fast. But it's the line getting in there, and you don't know the person in front of you. Are they making a quick stop like I am, or are they having issues? Are they sick? Are they going to be in there? And there's nothing you could do about that. So I was a little bit concerned that I was stopping so early, that was really going to mess me up. But I also, in the back of my mind, knew if I'm feeling pressure on my abdomen that I need to stop, to use the restroom, if I don't stop now, I'm going to be thinking about that for the next mile and the next mile and the next mile. So I just stopped when I needed to, so I wouldn't be concentrating on that. That took a little bit of time, but I was fine. And then, like I said, mile 17, I did get a little bit dizzy, but that was just for a few minutes, luckily. And then I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit later, but mile 18, I ran into my husband. So that was a nice little moment there for about 18 to 19. And then in my training, I had 3 20-mile training runs, which we had spoken about in previous podcasts. So I've never run more than 20.17 miles. So once I looked at my watch and saw that I think it was 20.34, I happened to see that. And I thought to myself, I've never been here before. Like, I've run farther than I've ever run, and I'm doing this. And that gave me a mental, boost as well, because I was feeling good, and I'd been farther than I had been previously. And we also spoke on a previous podcast about my last 20-mile run being really tough, and how I struggled tremendously for the last 5 of that. And the fact that I was now past that with no struggles, I was just feeling really good. Also, I was familiar with the end of the course because I had run the half marathon twice, and the end of the marathon course follows the half marathon course for probably the last 5 or 6 miles, I think. So when I was in that part of the course, I knew what was coming. And it's actually a really beautiful, I'm not sure of the neighborhood we run through, but we run through a neighborhood in Richmond that is just beautiful houses, and you have the homeowners lining the streets and lots of little kids, and it's just so beautiful. It's one of my favorite parts of the course. So to be running through there and then knowing in the back of my mind that I'm almost done and that I know where I'm going from here on out, there's no uncertainty from me not being familiar with the course, that helped. And I got a boost at the end. I was feeling so great during my last 3 and 4 miles that they were my fastest of my entire run. And my last mile was actually one of the fastest miles I've ever run in my life. And it's because I just was so proud of myself for doing this and knowing that I was finishing strong. And at that point, I knew I was going to be finishing much faster than I had ever even dreamed of finishing. So everything at the end was just great. And I did not hit that proverbial wall that people say sometimes that you hit. And I even had messages running through my phone. I was using an app where people can send you pre-recorded messages, and I had a lot of them during the last mile, and some of them were from friends saying, you could be at that wall, and it could be really hard right now, but just know 1 foot in front of the other. You've got this. We believe in you. And I was thinking in the back of my mind, one foot in front of the other, man, I've got this. Like, I'm not struggling at all. And I was just flying that last mile, which I don't know if that's typical of everyone. Some people get that last burst and some people struggle. But for me, it was just a beautiful ending to a wonderful, 161 days of training. It all ended wonderfully.
Well, I will tell you, I'm sitting here kind of snickering. You're saying, I don't know if everybody feels that burst of energy. I was standing there watching you and a lot of folks come down that finish line for their first marathon. And so many of you were sprinting, smiling. And I was standing there with Tracy Outlaw. And I said, I have no idea how they are even doing that, because I came down that, and I think you remember, I came down that finish line.
Yes.
Literally, my legs were locking up. It was all I could do to get one foot in front of the other in a walk. There was no smile to be found. It was just I hit the wall at, I don't know, mile 3, and the rest of the way was just a struggle. But that, as I've looked at, you and I belong to this just beautiful running family, Megsmiles, and I don't know, I think there were like 17 folks that ran their first marathons, and your Facebook feed, I'm sure, is much like mine, just post after post after post, which is great. But the one theme that just keeps jumping out at me is all these people are running marathons and smiling, and it's like, I don't know how that is. But one thing, I think, you had a very tough training plan. And I know Kimberly Caldwell used the same training plan, 3 20-mile runs. And she was another one that was just grinning. Mindy was grinning. And I think she had a fairly tough training plan. I'm just wondering if you've thought about that. How are you thankful that you did that training plan? Do you think that set you up a little bit differently than other training plans? And we won't even get into Andreas's training plan yet, but I'm just wondering if you really think that helped you out.
I do. And it's funny, as you mentioned, our friend Kim Caldwell, she and I did follow the same plan, and we both trained virtually together, which was great. We were following the same plan, and we're friends, so we would check in with each other on our runs, virtually, and we finished within a minute of each other, and we did not run together at all. So I think that's just a testament to this plan working, that, it prepared us to finish this race, and we both exceeded the times we had hoped for. Like we've said before, I didn't know what I was doing signing up for this marathon in terms of training. I had never trained for something like this, so I chose this plan because it was backed by the people that run the race there. And I chose intermediate because I felt like I was closer to an intermediate runner than a novice runner in terms of how long I've been running and the number of halves I've ran and things like that. But a lot of people told me, wow, 160 days of training, that's a lot. And wow, 3 20-milers, that's a lot. But, I just trusted the training, and I am so glad I did. It worked for me. As we had spoken previously, each of my 20-mile training runs were different, and I think that helped me to do all 3 of them, because I learned things about myself during each one, and the fact that I had one really bad one was important, because you need bad runs sometimes to appreciate the good ones and to know what you're capable of getting through. So for me, I really enjoyed this plan. When I train for my next marathon, I will probably use a shorter plan just because I know what I'm doing now. But I definitely think multiple 20-mile runs is the smart way to do it.
Yeah, well, let's go there. You have already jumped in. I think it was Robin. I was talking with somebody, and they said, I wonder if Julie will do the marathon again next year. And I didn't think about it. I said, yes, I absolutely think she will. She's just built that way, no matter. And I still don't. What was your final time, Julie?
My final time was 4:54:59.
Wow. Very impressive.
Yeah, and thank you. I was thinking 5:30. And then I had some friends that said, oh, no, you can do it under 5. You can do it in under 5. And again, those bathroom stops, I didn't know how that was going to affect me. And I didn't want to put that pressure on myself at all, because that's out of my control. And again, I probably spent in line at least 9 or 10 minutes in line, waiting to use the bathrooms during the race. And when I was probably at mile 23 or 20, probably mile 23, when I looked at my watch and saw my elapsed time, and I realized I'm feeling good, and if I just run my normal pace, if not faster, I can make 5 hours. That also gave me that burst, because I really wasn't paying attention to time. And during the whole race, I just wanted to finish, and I knew I would finish, and I wasn't concerned about time. But then when I saw, wow, I could do 5 hours, then that gave me that little push. And yeah, I'm signed up for next year already. I'll be back. That'll be my second marathon. Will be Richmond next year, and I am going to put some goals out there. I'm really going to train differently.
Yeah. That's what I saw in your face when you went by, is that this was a good experience, and I knew just from all of our conversations, your immediate direction would be, not only can I do this, I can come back and do it better. I just knew that's where you were going.
Yeah,
now,
definitely.
Our buddy Andreas, he, he's been I don't know if he's been a willing participant of these conversations, but he's surely been a participant of these conversations, and it's been well documented. He had a bit of a different training plan, and really one was probably not much different than one I adopted when I ran my first one last year, the one that produced no smile, no sprint, not much of anything coming down the finish. How's he doing post-race? How's Andreas doing? Was he sore?
He is doing great. Yes, he not terribly sore by any means, but he was more sore than I was. I was not sore. I'm not trying to brag. Maybe I'm a little bit, but I really was not sore at all after this race. No knee pain. I could feel my legs. It's not like I didn't feel like I ran. I mean, you could feel some tenderness, but I was not sore at all. And I give that complete credit to my training. The fact that I had trained so much and that my body was getting used to this, that I had taken ice baths before and all that good stuff that we've talked about. He was much more sore afterwards. That night, I might have been showing off a little bit. We went out to dinner, and we had to go upstairs to get to our seating at the dinner. And he's like, oh, my God, seriously, stairs? And he slowly starts walking up the stairs, and I sprinted up the stairs because I'm like, I'm not sore. Look at me. Da, 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 da.
So unlike you, Julie. So unlike you.
I do it all with a smile.
I know you do.
No, he really wasn't that bad. We spent the next day after the race, since we live on the West Coast and we don't get to the East Coast often, we spent the day sightseeing in Washington, D.C. So we were walking around all day, and I think that helped our legs also. We weren't sprinting around D.C., but we were moving, and, once we'd sit for a while, when he'd get up, he'd, for a second until he got moving again. But all in all, he had more soreness than I did, definitely, but he's good. Nothing terrible at all.
Now you caught him, or you guys connected at mile 18, and we had talked in the last podcast, you had some concerns about getting there at mile 18 or somewhere along the course, and him maybe struggling a little bit, and you having a hard time leaving him and finishing your race. How did that interaction go at mile 18? Because clearly at some point you went on without him. How did that all come to be?
So luckily he wasn't struggling, which was good, because I don't know, again, what I would have done if he had been in pain, if I would have wanted to stay with him, and if he would have said, which I know he would have, go ahead, go run your race. I don't know how that would have gone if he really was struggling, but he wasn't. I saw him right about mile 18, and when I was coming up on him, it was one of my intervals was about to start, where I was going to walk for a couple minutes, and he was walking, so that was great. I kind of nudged him on the shoulder and said hi, and we were walking together for a moment, and I said, okay, my walk's done. I'm going to start going again, and so I started to run, and he started running with me, and so we were running together for a little bit. And then he got ahead of me, and I was fine with that, because I knew in the back of my mind, I've got him. I've totally got him. He can get ahead of me. I'll catch him. And then again, I caught up to him again, and we were walking together for a moment or two, and then it was my turn to start running, and we didn't even, talk. He had his music on, I had my book on, and I just started to go, and I was a little bit in the back of my mind wondering, is he right behind me? Is he, ways behind me? And I'm like, Julie, don't even worry about it. Just run your race. He knows where you are. If it's important for him to catch up with you, he will. But he was fine. You're fine. Let's go. And then I just kept going and really didn't look back again. So I didn't know how far back he was from me, if he was right there or wasn't. And turned out I did get a little bit ahead of him, which, again, just good for bragging rights, just to tease him about that for probably the rest of our lives, or at least till next year if he ends up running a marathon and beats me, which very well could happen because in our previous experiences, that's the way it was. I was ahead of him for many years in half marathons, and then one day he beat me, and then I haven't been able to catch him since. So, that very well could happen where he could start smoking me later on, but I'm relishing in this for right now, and luckily he had a good run too, no injuries, nothing that held him back.
Now, I saw a Facebook post that sounded like he was at least entertaining coming back for the marathon. Do you think that's where he'll end up?
I'm not sure. I don't think he liked it. When I was done, I just was like, yes, oh my gosh, I was on that high, and I still am when I'm talking about it. It's all coming back. I had that marathon high. He did not. He was just like, oh, he was tired afterwards. And he just didn't have that last burst of adrenaline that I had that was getting me through it. So he was very proud of himself for finishing, but it wasn't this elated thing for him. So he's like, yeah, I'm done. That was fun. Not happening again. And I said, really? Come on. And he's like, no. He's like, I'm good with half. So we'll see. We've talked about it. There's a couple of days left to sign up at a very deep discount for the race, and the half marathon and the marathon pricing is very similar. So, I suggested maybe sign up for the marathon and you can always drop back if you want. He's like, I don't know. I'll make a decision in the next 2 days, but he's leaning to the half right now. So we'll see.
I can relate 100%. That's what everybody had said. Oh, when you cross that finish line, the bug will bite you and you'll have to do this again. I experienced none of that. Now, it wasn't that I wasn't proud, but it really was, for me, it was I survived and kind of, okay, I proved I could do it, because up to that point I wasn't sure I could, but that was about it. I don't know that I felt this high or this just joy that I saw in you and just so many people. But again, I admit I was not prepared for it. I trained, I ran some longer runs. I think my longest run was 19 miles once. I really trained to be able to do not much more than just survive it. And I think that makes a huge difference. I really do. And I think it's a couple of different mentalities. I had no time goal in mind. I mean, I have never been a runner, so even my first half marathon was just to prove I can cover that distance, and then that's kind of what the marathon became. Now, I've evolved a little bit since then, where time has become more of a focus for me, and that becomes part of the challenge for me, but I get where he's coming from.
Yeah, I think you two are very similar, it sounds like, and yeah, that's how he feels. Yeah, we'll see where it goes from here. But I think he may be a half marathoner, and a little bit selfishly in my mind, I said, well, that would be great if you did the half, because this way, he could be there for me at the end. And I even said that to him. I said, if you do the half next year, when I'm coming in on mile 25 or something like that, you could come out and run with me, and we could, go down there together, and you could witness me finishing, because he didn't see me finishing and I didn't see him finishing. Because we weren't together. So I thought that would be kind of neat for him to see me finish next year, and to kind of experience all that elation that I hope to feel again, firsthand.
I have no doubt you will. I have no doubt. So I'm curious, you've probably picked up on this. There's this wave of people, much more than I remember last year, wave of folks who are signing up for their first major race. Now, my wife today, Don't know where it came from, but she has suddenly signed up for a half marathon. I had to chuckle too because Andreas commented, "You can borrow my training plan if you want." So I kind of got a laugh out of that. But where do you think that comes from? I mean, you and I talked a little bit about, last year you were sitting watching folks, but really didn't immediately feel this pull. Oh, I got to go do that. But I mean, literally, there's a dozen folks I can count that in the last couple of days, jumping in, making use of this discount, have signed up for their first big races. Where do you think that's coming from?
I really think it's the community that we're a part of. And, as you've said before, we're a part of the Megsmiles community. And it is the most supportive group of people I have ever met in my life. And all 3 years that I have been back to Richmond to celebrate this weekend and remember Meg and run with her family and her friends, there's been a dinner the night before the race. And all 3 years I have been fortunate enough to sit down at a table with people, some people that I don't know. Sometimes there's been some people that I'm familiar with, but every year I've sat down with people that I have never spoken with before. And every year I've left feeling so fulfilled by these new people that I've met and learning their stories and sharing with them. And one of the women that I sat down with this year, Christine, she was running the half marathon, and she said she's thinking about the marathon for next year. She wasn't quite sure. Probably was. It was like 90%. And I was sharing, my nervous enthusiasm about what my race was going to be like and how I've trained and what a great opportunity it was to run with all these people cheering you on and all this. And I could see her getting excited and thinking about it. And then she said the next day, yep, she signed up for the marathon. She felt that pull from everyone and knew the support was there. And I think she had wanted to, but was a little bit on the fence. But then being around all these supportive, encouraging people gave her that final tip she needed to sign up for the marathon. And so all I can say to people that are listening to this that maybe, are not familiar with the Megsmiles group or are not a part of it, if you're on Facebook, go join that page because you will find the most supportive people. And geographically, if you can't come out to Richmond to run this run, we're all there still to support you virtually or find a running group in your area. I don't personally run with people often. I know there's running groups, in my area. I don't do that, but I know that many communities have different running groups that I heard of people that love that and find such camaraderie with other runners, that live near them and people they wouldn't have met, but then they met them because they did training runs with them and they found support that way. So I just think finding supportive people and runners are so supportive, really just helps get people excited. And I think that's why we know so many people that have decided to run longer distances and to sign up for new races. Is because they just see the support and the encouragement and all that from everyone. And, your wife, I love that she ran her first 8K on Saturday. And then by Sunday knew she was signing up for a half marathon. I mean, that's amazing. I'm so excited for her and for your family and your boys to see that. I mean, you two are such amazing role models. It's just wonderful.
Well, thank you. And I think maybe you saw that thread where she has made this announcement that, she's already starting to talk about beating me. I said her Energy Robo is coming out.
I love it.
Like, where is that? Wait, have you been listening to the Bravo podcast or what? So
the problem is I've had so much fun the last, 5 or 6 months, however long this has been, 4 or 5 months, I don't know, competing with Andreas, tongue in cheek with this and having this fun with him that we're going to have to find something else to have a little friendly rivalry with because it really has been fun, poking each other. And I did joke with him that I finished about 25 minutes ahead of him. Actually, I should figure out exactly what it is, but it's about a little bit more than 25 minutes. So that's going to be the theme in our house for a while. You know, I'm going to get up in the morning when my alarm goes off, and I'm going to nudge him and say, oh, wait, honey, I'm sorry. You have 25 more minutes to go. Don't worry, sleep for 25 more minutes. You know, little things like that.
Little
things.
That, you know. Please keep me posted on how that goes over.
Well, you know, I echo, and I wonder if you'll experience this, or, you know, I said I didn't experience any sort of finish line high, or I certainly didn't run down that hill with a big smile. But I will say that finishing that marathon was life-changing for me. And, you know, Howard Cross posted something last night, Meg's brother, which, you know, what an emotional thing watching him finish his first marathon. But, you know, he posted that maybe a marathon isn't for everybody, but he encourages everybody to go out there and tackle something that they don't think they can do. And part of his point, and then I expanded on it on my own post this morning, is that, you know, fear is tied to our imagination. And so when we sit and we're imagining that we might get hurt, or that we might get sick, or that we might suffer a job loss in our life, or when we're thinking about a marathon, we imagine that we would never be able to do it. And so these things we're imagining we can't do, they make us fearful. But the flip side of that, which is what I was talking about this morning, is that when we start imagining on the bright side of things, that we can do things, that we can get this job, when we start imagining more positive things, we start to have less fear about things. And that has absolutely been my experience post that marathon. I've shared the story often that this podcast sort of was born in those last 6 miles when I was just, I had nothing else to lean on but my faith, and God was kind of talking to me and putting these ideas in my head. And I don't think I would have ever had the courage to step out and launch something like this, to be sitting here talking to you and then sharing that with people, if I had not decided to run that marathon and finish it. And then the things that I imagine today are so more positive than the things I imagined prior to that marathon. So I'm hoping that's what happens to you as well. It sounds like, you know, you're already signed up for another marathon, so you're already imagining on the positive side of things. But I really hope that's your experience, Julie.
Thank you. Yeah, even we talked a little bit early on about my perfectionist tendencies and how I was, if it says this, I'm going to do this. And if it says this, I'm going to do this. And, you know, I did follow my plan very, very rigidly and very close to knocking every, you know, tick off on the page. Yes, I did this. Yes, I did this. But there were a few times when I didn't. And when I missed a training run, and I missed a few cross-training days, and I modified some things, and I survived just fine. Again, I exceeded my expectations with my marathon experience. So that was a great learning curve for me, too, that it's okay to not do everything exactly how you're supposed to. And things can still work out. And this whole training gave me the confidence of, I could do that. I could do that. And if I could do this, who knows what's next for me. But yeah, like you said, it's wide open, and I don't know what's next for me. But I am starting with the confidence that if I put my mind to something, even if it's scary and even if I don't think I can do it, you know, I can. And maybe I'll fail, or maybe it won't be as easy as I thought, but if I stick to it and try again, I know that in the long run, whatever I want to do, I can do.
Absolutely. I am curious. You talked about, you know, Katie and I and the boys. What'd your kids have to say?
Well, the first thing I did was I texted my 15-year-old son when I was at the finish area. I was waiting for Andres to come across, but a mutual friend of ours had been tracking both of us and was texting me and had told me Andres wasn't across yet. And then, Andres just crossed. And before I even saw Andres, but my friend had texted me a little screenshot of my race time and Andres' race time. So I immediately texted our 15-year-old son saying, I'm done. And guess what? I beat Daddy. And he's like, dang it, I lost $5. So he bet against me. But he's very proud of me. And all three of our children, they're really proud of us. And it was great. You know, they're not runners, possibly not runners yet. We'll see. But I know that we're showing them how being active is really important, and just what a great community we've found, great friendships we found, and I think it does good for them to see what we're doing.
Nah, you and Andreas you're beautiful people outside of all the running, and that's certainly a huge part of what we do. But what I love about this family is it's, you know, probably more important about how we interact with each other and encourage each other just to be kind of different in a world that's sometimes a little harsh with one another. So you guys are just a joy to be around, and I'm sure that's just symbolic of your household. So you have some lucky kids.
Thank you.
There.
One last thing to throw in, that just to say, because I wasn't expecting this, I forgot to mention this. When I was coming down that last quarter mile of the hill towards the finish line, I became very emotional. And I can be an emotional person. I mean, I'm known to cry quite easily and often over things, but running really has not made me cry at all, except for the one gosh darn day my Garmin broke. But I haven't cried other than that. And when I was coming down that finish line chute, and I saw you, luckily you were wearing a big white Megsmiles sweatshirt, and I recognized your sweatshirt right away. So I saw that, and I saw the flag where everyone was standing, and I started crying, and kept telling myself, don't fall, because it's such a steep hill, and I didn't want to fall. But I was trying not to cry, trying to fall, and I'm still smiling. So I'm smiling as I'm crying because I felt so great. And then as soon as I got through that finish line and I knew that it was done and they put the medal around my neck, I mean, I started crying because I didn't realize how emotional of a moment it was. How it just kind of all hit me that I had worked so hard for so long. And I'm really glad that happened. I'm glad that those emotions kind of poured out of me, because it made me just really appreciate everything more than just, okay, I'm done. You know, my body knew I needed that one little explosion of emotions. And I didn't expect that. So that was completely unexpected, but it was good.
Now that piece I can relate to. I can't relate to the smile, but that emotion, you know, I was near the end, so the course was pretty empty. So there were a lot of folks who had the opportunity to come out and join me. And, you know, I'd see one more face come and I'd say, oh, I'm not going to cry. And Meg's mom, Pam, came, and she was under my right arm, and I said, I'm not going to cry. But the end for me was my two boys came running out, and that was it. You know, when they came and ran next to me, I lost it at that point. So it is an emotional thing. I think you just spend so much time thinking about it. And if you've never done it before, it's natural to question, can I do this? I absolutely was not sure I could do it, as much as I said, I'm going to do it. But when you see that finish line and you know, I'm about to do the hardest thing that I swore I could never do, and then you have all that support, because for me, you said it a little bit ago, and I'm sure it's found in a lot of different communities, but this Megsmiles community it's really become more like family. So to see them waiting around for you and cheering you in, it's very emotional. It was more like a family experience outside of just my wife and two boys. It really felt like I was sharing that with family, and that they had been critical in helping me do something that I never could have done without them. I really couldn't. And to feel that and to know people have that sort of impact on your life. And then, you know, later on I came to realize that, you know, by running that and being a part of that, I was able to have an impact on other people's lives, just like you have. It's just fun to pass that on. And I go back to mainly because it's life changing. It's not just hanging up another medal. When you accomplish something that you didn't think you could do or that you were capable of, it starts to open up so many other doors in your life. You're gonna take on things or experience things that are gonna make you a much broader person, a much more joyful person that you never would have experienced. So, it's gonna be fun to watch. But I get that emotional piece.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what's next. I don't know what to do with myself today because I had crazy jet lag yesterday, and today's my first day back in the real world post-marathon. No, I'm done traveling. I woke up in my own bed. I had to go back to carpools and back to work, and today's day one of my post-marathon journey, and I'm going to go for a run tonight. I don't know how far I'm going to run. Might be a mile, might be 3 miles, might be, who knows, but no one's telling me what to do. So it should be interesting. I'm excited to see what my body tells me to do from here on out for the next few weeks till I kind of decide what's next.
And I will be anxious to see that and follow that because, in all of our conversations, one of the things that came out loud and clear, I think is just part of your personality. And then this training plan, you were committed to it, but not just from a standpoint of, okay, it says this, I have to do it. There was clearly some passionate connection to it. You had something in mind in the end, and this was part of the process to get there. So you were kind of married to that whole idea. And then, I wonder how well or how long you'll be able to go without some sort of this big thing out in front of me and this plan to get there. It just seems to be part of your personality. So it'll be fun to see how that works out for you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited to see where I go.
Well, I have a feeling it'll be big places. Julie, I am just really proud. I'm glad you did it, but I'm kind of sad that it's over. I've really enjoyed these conversations. But in all seriousness, there are a lot of folks that are going to run their first marathons next year. So I'm real glad that they'll be able to go back and listen to these conversations you and I had at 4 very different stages of your plan. You're an inspiration, so I'll definitely be pointing them to follow your lead.
Thank you. I'm real happy about that. I'm glad to have shared this, and I do hope that I actually had some people come up to me over the weekend and tell me that they did find inspiration in this, or, oh, they had the same experience with this or that, or, oh, wow, I went through that. And it was just really great to know that I'm not alone and that it was great. So I'm hoping new marathoners will listen to this and know that they can do it just like I did.
Well, give my best to Andreas and tell him, in all seriousness, I mean, that to me, that is still mind-boggling that he clearly broke 5.5 hours. So that's on that training plan. That's pretty impressive, and he did a good job. Even if he finished in second place, and even if even if he's got 25 minutes to make up in that family, he's still pretty impressive in my book. So I'm just glad
I agree.
Both of you were a part of this. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for the opportunity. We both enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to continuing to listen to all the interesting people that you bring to us through this podcast, and keep doing what you're doing, and I can't wait to see what's next for you too.
All right. Well, I know my second marathon's what's next for me in January. So
exciting.
Yeah. So we'll see how that podcast turns out. But Julie, thank you. Great job, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Keith. I really appreciate this, and I look forward to talking to you again.
All right. Have a great night, my friend. See ya.
Thank you, Julie. It has truly been a pleasure the last several months following your journey, and to be there at the finish line last Saturday, seeing your big smile run down that hill, knowing you had completed what you set out to do. You certainly, in line with this podcast, you certainly fought the good fight. You finished that race, and you had to lean on an awful lot of your own strength and faith to get that done. So what a wonderful conclusion to a great story. And I'm glad we have this here because I know already, like we talked about in the podcast, we know several folks signing up for their first marathons next year. And so there'll be a series of these 4 podcasts from Julie, from idea to run a marathon all the way through her months of training to this final episode where she got it done and got to celebrate with us. So congratulations, Julie, again. Really proud of you. And Andreas, don't let her give you too much grief, buddy. You finished one as well. And in my book, anybody who lines up and finishes that 26.2 miles is a hero in my book. So great job, my friend. And so to any of you who ever think or ever contemplating, can I run a marathon? I think these last 2 episodes I've done on this podcast, last episode was Chris Cook, who has no arms, no legs, and I met him by standing and watching him zip by me at the Marine Corps Marathon on a skateboard. And to hear him talk about climbing those hills at the Marine Corps Marathon, and again, Chris barely has one part of a leg, no arms, no legs, that he uses to push himself along on this skateboard. It's incredible to see him do that. And then Julie, obviously, Julie is a very able-bodied runner, but still, there was a time when she didn't think that she could do that. She didn't have the confidence and the belief in herself that she could actually run 26.2 miles. But she put her mind to it. She decided she was going to do it, put in all of the hard work necessary to get to the point where she could get out there last Saturday, start, and then finish and celebrate. Both of them, and so many folks I talk to on this podcast, are just testimonies to, one, most days we're capable of far more than we give ourselves credit for being capable of. And 2, once you decide you're going to do it and then you do it, there's just this wave of confidence on the other side of that that's going to open up doors in your life that you just never thought could be open. A lot of the doors you never even imagined that were there to begin with, let alone your capacity to open them. So I'm glad to have this conversation with Julie today. I was glad to have that conversation with Chris. But I'm most glad to have this conversation with you, if you're listening, because I guarantee you that you are capable today of doing some things that in the back of your mind you don't think you can do. And I'm just telling you that, like Julie, like Chris, it starts with an idea. It starts with, like I talked with Julie in the podcast, it starts with imagining that I can do something. And then little by little start attacking it. And you'll feel that fear start to dwindle, the fear start to go away. And that fear eventually turns into a confidence and a belief that goes far beyond a marathon. I'm talking specifically about lining up, doing a marathon, and seeing what happens on the other side of that. And on the other side of that, I'm telling you what happens is you have this belief in yourself that you never have had before. So that's my thoughts. That's kind of my wrapping up thoughts on what Julie just did. And all of those, I think it was 17 people I read off at the beginning of this podcast who captured and completed their first marathon. And I think what wraps it up the best is there's an irony in it, that there's a powerful emotion that comes from finishing a marathon, running 26.2 miles. But the real irony is that it's not a finish line. It's a beginning of something much bigger, and often much bigger than running. And that's certainly been my experience since finishing my marathon. Like I talked with Julie, this podcast is one of the beginnings that came from that finish line feeling. And that's why I just encourage everybody to, if it's not a marathon, think about something today that you can't do, tackle it, finish it. And I think in the end, when you finish it, you'll be on to the beginning of some big, big things in your life, at least much bigger than you ever thought were possible prior to finishing whatever it is you decide to tackle. So I hope you'll keep coming back here to get inspiration from incredibly inspiring people like Julie and Doug Bond and folks like that. Their stories, they were all at one point where a lot of you are today, believing that you can't do something. They both made a decision. No, I'm going to go out and do it. They did it. And now today they both know they're capable of far more. And so I can't wait to see what comes from them. I hope you'll keep coming back to listen, and so we can all watch and see what happens with you. Until the next time then, when you'll come back, if you're running this week, run hard. If you're not running, go cheer somebody on. I did a lot of that last weekend. It's fulfilling, it's energizing, it's inspiring. So if you have a chance, go cheer somebody on. And if running is not your thing, well, then I guess I'm really especially grateful that you're here today, and I hope you'll keep coming back. Until next time, have a great day.
I will go and fight.